Hello and welcome to the third and final installment of how to complete the Common Application. On the previous two videos, we talked about how to set up your Common App profile, and then we talked about how to answer the main questions in the Common App tab. This time, we're going to be talking about all the individual questions that go on in these different colleges. Now, don't worry, most of the colleges are the same in terms of the questions that they ask, and there are some differences, and we'll go over the most common ones. Make sure that you've got your most likely colleges on here. There's space for 20. That would be quite a lot to apply to, but you can put other ones on there that you may or may not apply to. You can fill in the questions, and in the end, it's up to you whether or not you submit. If you need to add more, go to College Search, find your college, and add it on. Now, once you've got some colleges, click on the first college and have a look at this information. It gives you some general information about what you need to know, like deadlines. Be a little bit careful about the essays because they can be a bit misleading. Most of them will require the Common App essay. Most of them will have college questions, which may or may not be what we would refer to as a supplemental essay, hidden amongst the other questions. Sometimes, for instance, here it says there's no writing supplement, but actually the supplemental essay appears in the college questions. For some colleges, for instance, Colgate University, it says there's no college questions and no writing supplement. That's not true. It's just that they ask you for the writing supplement after you've applied. So you have to be a bit careful there. Check with us, check with the university website directly to make sure that you know what's required and don't apply right on the deadline in case you need to do more. Now let's go to any college here and let's click on questions to get started. First question's pretty straightforward. You need to say whether it's full-time or part-time. You decide which term you want to start in. Most people will be going for fall. Sometimes you might choose a spring term start. Talk to us if you're thinking about that. It can give you a bit more time off after school. And also there's sometimes a higher probability of being admitted, but make sure that you know what you can and can't do and what you should do. For instance, here you can only apply for full start. Now, the admissions plan, you've got to make sure you get this right, but you can change it before you submit. Early action means you apply early, you find out early, and you normally find out in December or up to about February, so earlier than the other colleges, and it's not binding. Then you've got early decision 1, which means you apply normally by 1st of November, sometimes 15th of October. You find out normally in December or maybe a little bit later, but it's binding. You must go. Early decision 2, you apply normally at the same time as regular decision, so normally around the beginning of January. You find out a little bit earlier, normally around February, sometimes March, but again, it's binding and you must go. Regular decision, you normally apply in January and you find out in April, but you don't have to go. Some colleges have other options like EA2. They might have restrictive early action. It can get confusing. Before you decide what plan you're going to do, talk to us because we will be able to help you work out what is right and what's wrong. And just be very careful. If you apply ED and you get admitted, you must go. Okay, so make sure you've got that right. Next question is about financial aid. If you think that you need financial aid, put yes. And by the way, if you do that, you're going to have to submit other forms and you normally need to apply early. So make sure that you think about this nice and early. Make sure that you've got all your financial and family information ready. You might need to fill in what's called the CSS profile. You might need to fill in, if you're American, FAFSA. You might need to link your social security number to it. I'm going to put no for the moment. Now you see here, Bard has immediately put what we would call a supplemental essay in. Classic essay, why Bard? You've got to make sure you understand the requirements before you start filling in the Common App, because otherwise suddenly on deadline day, you need to fill in a Common App extra essay. So you've got to make sure that you understand the requirements and you don't rush this. Really, really important. Then some standard questions about your age, about equity and inclusion. And then let's go on to the next one, which is academics. Here, they normally ask you what sort of programs you're interested in order of preference. So I've put a few here. Sometimes you don't have to put any. Sometimes you can put that you've got no preference at all. Be honest. It doesn't mean that you have to study it once you're there, although some programs will have specific requirements. So again, just make sure that you're putting down things that make sense for you and that you talk to us first. Activities is just about what you think you might want to do when you're at college in terms of extracurricular activities. It's worth being honest here and putting down things that are interesting to you, even if you put them in the activities section of the Common App. Contacts is about how you found out about the college. It's also a chance for you to show your demonstrated interest. So do put as many down as possible, where you got in touch with them, where you visited them, that sort of thing. Put down your mobile phone number if you want to be contacted. It's a good idea. And under family, they're just checking to see if any of your family have been to this college before or worked for the college, because they need to have honesty about that. And here it's got a question about being an international student and whether you're first generation. So make sure that's all correct. Nice and simple. Now, some universities might have some other questions that are interesting, and I'm just going to look on Boston University, because under academics, it doesn't just ask about major, it also asks about what college you want to go into, and you need to check what college your major is under. And also it says here, do you want to be part of a pre-professional advisory program, for instance, pre-law? Now, that might be the case for you. You might think that you want to do pre-med. If you're an international student, you need to be very, very careful about these programs, because you may not be able to do it. So do talk to us first before you decide to do that. Okay, back to Bard, and we'll make sure that all the questions are ticked off, which they are here. And then we're going to go to recommenders and FERPA. And you remember from the first video, we waived the FERPA release authorization here, and that meant that you will not be able to see your letters of recommendation, but it gives the college certainty that you didn't write them. Now we need to invite your recommenders. You always need to invite a school counsellor. You need to make sure that you know who the person in your school is who is the counsellor, not your tutor normally, and it's not a teacher of your choice. So do talk to the school and make sure this is right, and talk to us first before you decide. Teachers, you normally have to have 2, sometimes more, teachers who will write letters of recommendation for you. Now, these letters of recommendation are not just about your subject, they're about your character as a whole. So it's important to choose these carefully. Now, I'll show you the process of inviting a teacher. So you click here, you put their email address and name and details in. Now, where it says here, would you like this teacher to complete an evaluation for your Bard college application? It doesn't matter whether you put yes or no straight away, because whether you do that or not, they will still get an invitation to join the Common App and to write you a letter of recommendation. Later on, you decide whether or not to attach them to a particular application, and the teacher can't see that. Just to show you, if I go to Boston University and I go to recommenders, you can see I haven't chosen the teachers here, but I've already invited them. So I can choose which teacher I want to assign to this college's application. And I can always delete that later if I want to. Back to Bard. We've now filled in the counsellor and the teacher nominations. If you want to have someone else write a letter of recommendation for you, you can invite them here. But please be careful before you do this. It's not always a good idea just to have loads and loads of references. You need to make sure that these are really worthwhile and that the college will really want to read them. Giving them more to read is not always the best idea. So talk to us first before you decide to do that. You should always invite your UES advisor here. The colleges can't see this. It just allows us to be able to see what's going on your application and make sure that everything's being done properly. Whenever you add anyone, particularly your counsellor and your advisor, make sure that you enable the preview, because that way they can see that your essays are complete and that the other things are complete. So always make sure you do that. Once everything is ticked, you can go to review and submit. You need to listen carefully here, because the process normally is that you click the button to submit and it goes through to a payment screen. There's a few screens because of international payments. You have to use a credit card. There's a few things you have to go through. Be very careful about that. And once you click paid, that doesn't mean that you have submitted, but it will recognize that you've already paid. And then some big confetti will come up and say, congratulations, you've submitted to this college. Now, be really careful, because as soon as you've done that, other things might appear here under the college. It might suddenly say, now, do you want to submit the writing supplement? You normally have to go and submit that separately. So don't assume that you've submitted just because you've paid. And once you have clicked submit, check that you haven't forgotten to submit the writing supplement. That's really, really important. Now, before you submit to any college, make sure that you have checked with your advisor, make sure you check with the school that they're happy, and make sure that you know what you are submitting. So in the previous video, we talked about standardized test scores. Remember that you might submit the standardized test scores here if it is in your Common App tab. Now, some colleges, for instance, Boston University, they normally ask you whether or not you want them considered. So if you put no, they won't see them. But Bard, for instance, doesn't have that question, and therefore they might see them if you submit and it's in your Common App tab. So you might want to make sure that if you don't want them submitted, you delete it out of the Common App tab before you submit to that particular college. You can always put them back in again later. If you've got any other questions about this, please make sure you contact us at info@ueseducation.com, or just go to our website, ueseducation.com, and you can contact us through there. This covers most of the common stuff in the Common App. It doesn't cover all the silly little questions that might come up for each college, so please make sure you check carefully and ask us if you're not sure. And if you're using an advisor through UES, you've got to make sure you speak to them and they check over everything before you submit. Again, if you've got any questions, contact us at ueseducation.com. Thank you.